What's up guys, my name is Your Heroes and welcome back to more Gatesville, and today I'm going to be talking about the most OP or the most favourable nation that I think is good for Conquest. Now I'm going to be talking about this specific nation and why they're so good in Conquest, and talk about what type of units they have in their tech tree, in their research tree, which makes them so powerful. So if you guys like to find out all the information about why you should choose this nation in Conquest, then make sure you subscribe, like that button, and make sure you click the notification bell for more videos like this. But without further ado, let's get straight into the video. And as you can see right in front of you, that it is Germany. But now, why do I think Germany is the most, favorable nation over the other nations? Now, in the case of infantry, I think that would actually go to the Americans, but in general, just overall, just experience wise and how well trained the troops are, and how well trained not how well trained, but how good the AT guns are, and how good the armored cars are, all the way down to the tanks and aircraft. I think the Germans are just right at the top, above every other nation, even after the addition of airborne, which was introduced for the Americans. I think Germany has still got the top dog of Conquest. Now let's go to the research tree and I'll tell you why. By the way, I am basing this off a hardcore difficulty, high economy, and a large campaign. Now if you're feeling really confident, then you could put it at a medium economy, because I still think Germany is that good. But for people who don't, maybe like myself, who don't feel like they're that confident, even though they've been playing it for years, then you can put it on a high economy and turn off Fog of War. But a lot of people criticized me for that for last time, so who knows, I might just keep it on. But this is not a gameplay, this is just more of just a tutorial of why you should play Germany in Conquest. Alright guys, well let's firstly start off in the starting units that you get available for free. So these are the units that you actually don't need to pay for, don't need to research for. The only thing that it does cost is for you to actually move them over into your selection area when you pick it. But the first of all, you get an officer, you get the first proper squad, which are called the Sieg. I'm the English try and pronounce that, but that squad there. You get medics, AT gun, tank crew, German ammo crate, and probably I think one of my favourite starting AT guns, which is the 3.7 Pak 36. Now this does pretty much get out of date really towards the start of battle, just because of how small caliber it is, because you won't be able to penetrate probably through your, I'm thinking Soviet tanks such as your T-34s and your T-70s even might struggle against this. This thing might go struggle up against, but also because it is actually quite low and it is quite small than its camo rating, which is very good, and because it is a small target, it's harder to hit. So that means and it has a rapid rate of fire, which makes this gun absolutely perfect for killing those lightly armored vehicles. And it does come with 4 or 5 crew as well, which is excellent. The next one is, now they also do have some starting light armored vehicles, which you can see they have a motorbike, a armored truck with a machine gun on it, and also just a Kuba wagon, and also a Kuba wagon but with a machine gun. I think honestly this is probably one of the best starting units you'll ever get. I know the Americans and the Soviets do have, and even Finnish have, the rest of the faction do very good starting units, but I think for me this is just the best. Compared to the Americans and the Soviet, I think the Germans are just the best in tanks, and also in this selection of infantry, which are actually, you can see, look very well equipped for guns, for health, for their just overall just great starting unit. And they have a 200 point HP, which is absolutely amazing for a starting squad unit. So whereas the Soviets, they don't have a great starting unit, and the Americans, again, they kind of do, but I would still give it to the Germans. So overall, the starting units are absolutely top tier in this game for the German Conquest, and that's why I would put a strong point towards the Germans. Let's move on to another thing that I actually really like about the Germans is that their tech tree is just a research. There's so many options since the upgrade of the DLC coming out. I can't remember which one that basically extended it for the Germans. Is that look at their infantry, you get a armored, basically armored troops that come in a vehicle. You get all the way up to these guys, which I can't actually even name. These are the Armored Panzer Sturm Grenadier Squad, and you've got the heavy Volks Grenadier Squad. You have the heavy Sturm Grenadier Squad. There's so many options for heavy armored units, which is absolutely amazing. And one of them is actually doesn't cost you any research points. It is very cheap for these guys, considering even though the Germans did, you know, are relatively expensive compared to the Soviets and even the Finns. I would say that for the heavy armor guys, it's relatively cheap. Only the best units in the game are only costing you 2 research points, which are absolutely incredible. And even the Volstrom squad, which is the late 1945 squad, doesn't cost you a single thing. The only way you can get it is you have to get the ones before it, the other units before it. So this is actually an incredibly free unit, which I would absolutely vitalize on, because that means it allows you to get to the other great squads. And again, it allows you to get them pretty much for nothing because they're so cheap, as well as also having the infamous and famous little Goliath, which also there's 2 options for Goliath. You get the normal version and you get the armored version, which basically the armored version has more hit points, and I believe it can go, has a bigger explosion, or basically can take more hits because it is armored. So that's another huge point on why I think it's good. And no other nation has something like a small vehicle which is really hard to detect but has a massive blast radius, which basically if you don't see this thing or you don't kill it, then it's basically game over for your heavy tanks. For this thing could possibly even kill an IS-2, a super Pershing, even the Finns borrowed tanks such as, I don't know, the ISU 152. This small little tank, this small little armor thing can absolutely devastate heavily armored vehicles out of other nations, and it's costing you, the armored one is a free upgrade because, and even the first one is costing very little points to buy. So this is why I think that the Germans are very, very good, because they're cheap, and some of the units are even free if you go through one of the 2 paths or a couple of the paths that you get. So I would say you wouldn't even need to spend, even though there's a lot of units here, you can easily decide which line you want to go to by just deciding, right, I want to go through to the armored Grobs, blah, 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 Panzer Grenadier, whatever it's called. Or even if you want to get to Volstrom squad, it's only going to have to, there's maybe a longer route for that one, but overall, once you get that, the rest of them are becoming considerably cheaper, and that's what I really like about it. So really, really good. And they also have a great choice of mortars as well, which goes up to a 10 centimeter. I know that the Finns win in mortar wise by having their special doctrine unit, which is I believe the 170mm mortar. If you haven't checked out that video, then make sure you click in the link below, because that was an amazing video and an amazing explosion, which I would highly recommend. But something I would also recommend is their AT guns. Holy moly, I've never seen such a good amount of AT guns for Germans. The best German AT gun, I think, the best AT gun, in this game, I think, is the 8.8 flak 36. I think this thing can absolutely devastate targets such as KV-2s, also the American Shermans, Pershings, the IS-2s, the ISU 152. This thing can absolutely just kill everything, which I absolutely love. And also the great thing about this, it has quite a big shield armor around its gun, shield plating around its gun, which can actually hold, which means that if like a Sherman with a low caliber gun, or even with its high explosive guns, it can still take hits before it takes proper damage. And even then, it could probably still fire because it is that heavily well armored frontally. Literally no really tank can really defeat it, maybe except an ISU 152 with that 152mm gun. In that case, then yes, it is guaranteed one shot for this thing to explode. But in other cases, the route to this again is relatively, it is quite expensive at 4 research points, but honestly, see, once you get through even the flak point, the 8.8 flak 18, which is not good as 36, but still a very powerful weapon to use. Honestly, it's absolutely incredible. Another maybe research route I would absolutely get in if you are defending. That is an absolute incredible piece. And even the other artillery options that you get, such as 15cm AT gun howitzer, is absolutely incredible. Going onto your other howitzers, and even possibly one of the biggest artillery in this game is the 60mm Graf. Or one of, I didn't say is the, sorry, I meant one of the biggest is the 60cm Gerrit near 3, which is, I don't know, it's meant to be like a Graf, like, you know, that big kind of track railed gun, but basically just a tinier size of that. That's basically what it is. I know a lot of you are going to probably hack me at that, but they also have a different range of rocket artillery. They have the Nebelwerfer in three different ones. They also have vehicle stations as well, the Panzerwaffe 42, which is a vehicle moving one. They even have a tank one, a tank rocket tank, which I know just doesn't make sense, but that's what it is. And again, it is really expensive at 6 research points, but honestly, if you just want something that's relatively cheap and very maneuverable, go for that. Go for the armored line. Again, very good. And last thing I really want to talk about this tech tree is the tanks. Holy shit, I've never seen so many good starting tanks. I mean, you can actually get possibly one of the best starting tanks that will actually hold, that's more of just a distraction type because of how well armored it is. It's a copied French tank of the B2, but it's called the Panzer Kauf B2 740F. I know I butchered that name. It's just absolutely incredible tank, as well as the one before, the 35S 739F, which is another amazing tank. But the starting armor cars you get with it can be very powerful. If you start to go down this line, you can get yourself some really nice AA. Even the SDK 231 is an amazing AA for against airplanes and infantry, and even lately other armored lightly vehicles such as the T-70, which is absolutely amazing. As well as you can possibly get an upgraded version which allows you to get like a proper gun which is able to even deal with your Shermans, like your very lightly armored Shermans. And even though all Shermans are kind of the same armor, but again, they could possibly still go up against the Shermans, and the Shermans and the American Shermans are like your medium tanks. But this is just the starting vehicles, and the fact that they're even can go up against Shermans says a lot. And they even have optionals for like tank destroyers, such as even flame ones, but their main one, or the main one, which is really long, is this Panzer 1 Ulf F, which is basically that has KV1 armor, 17mm I believe at the front, but it has a really crap gun which is only really good at dealing with infantry, and it is in World of Tanks, and it's such a toxic tank in that game. But in this game in Gatesville, it's probably one of the, if not the most frustrating but OP tanks in the game, because it's really hard to penetrate, because it's going up against similar tanks like the T-70, which they cannot penetrate. Maybe they could penetrate the turret, but other than that, nah, the hull is completely just the same as a KV1. So try going up against this thing with other similar tanks like the T-70 and the I'm trying to think of the American ones, such as the M20 armored car. So yeah, really powerful. And then such as your tank destroyer, the Hetzers, you've also got your kind of your real tank destroyer, which the Stugs, which are actually quite a competitive force when you're dealing up against T-34s and against Shermans. I think the Stugs are your perfect opportunities to go up against your Shermans, because the Shermans are really crap. I'm like, Gatesville really need to, I've talked about a video of how crap the Shermans are and how a lot of you agreed with me on that. So this is why I think the Shermans do need to be upgraded when you're up against kind of Stugs that have really good frontal armor and very good at staying back while the Shermans try to push on against that. They have very powerful guns and have rapid DPM, or at least some of them as well, which, because they're kind of low caliber, so their caliber is not as high as the big tanks, so therefore their DPM is really good, but can still go through really good, you know, armor switches against the Shermans, even your higher up switches. Possibly, it's not in the game yet, but your T-29, if you know what that tank is. For the Americans, you're tons of options for your Panzer 3s. If you really want to go down your Panzer tanks and you kind of just like them for historical reasons, you can, but I wouldn't waste your time fully going on them, just because I think there's better options. I would possibly, if you really want to stop at a Panzer, stop at the Panzer 3J or the Panzer 3L, just because I think you're wasting. At that point, I wouldn't even consider maybe going for the Panzer 3H and stop there, and then go down to your Panzer 4s, which gives you loads of options. And the higher up you go, the better caliber of the gun it is, as well as the better armor it is, honestly. And that leads you to your Jagdpanzer. Again, really good sneaky tank destroyers, better than your Stugs, better armor than your Stug, and there's a pain in the ass to kill. And also because of how low profile it is, it's really hard to detect, especially if it's in a bush. So really watch out for that. And then kind of going on to your Panthers, going to your Jagdpanthers, these are when you're kind of start facing, again at this point, this is where the Americans would start to struggle, as well as Soviets, because even though the Soviets have your ISU 152, which can delete possibly a Jagdpanzer 4 and your Panzer 4s, you wouldn't get the ISU tank until you start meeting Panthers or Jagdpanthers, and in that case, you're kind of too late, because the ISU is very powerful and strong and has good armor, but when you have multiple Panthers surrounding you, you're going to get your ISU gun damaged, and that means you can't repair the tank because, you know, the Panthers are shooting at your crew. So, and even then, it's at that point you're starting to get towards your Tiger tanks, your heavy, your Tiger 2, your King Tigers, and then all the way down to your Sturm, to the best tank destroyer in the game, which is the Sturm. I don't know how to pronounce that. The Sturm Miser, I don't know, the Sturm Miser, just to piss everybody off. That thing is a rocket tank. That's basically what it is. You can actually see the rocket coming out of that barrel of the tank. That's how OP disgusting it is. Again, some of the small effects, and the thing is that armor is actually incredible on this thing. It is seriously incredible. Like I said, your super Pershings would struggle to go through this thing, and the super Pershings and even the IS-2s with a 122mm would still struggle to go against this thing. That's how powerful it is. And at that point, you get yourself a Jag Tiger, which is, I got 128mm, I believe, my World of Tanks knowledge. But in that case, the armor is just too strong, and even you get an Elephant, and at that point, it's just really OP. So, guys, this is my overall introduction, or more of my, you know, my opinion, saying play the Germans, or the Germans is the most fun and kind of what's friendly faction to play for Conquest. If you're new to the game and you really want a good faction to play for Conquest, play the Germans first off, and if you feel like you're confident with that, move on to the Soviets, then move on to the Americans, and then move on to the Finnish, because the Finnish is the hardest faction to play for Conquest, just because of how limited they are with their tank options, with their infantry options. So yeah, really play them last. But if you really want a really good starting nation, start with the Germans. They have so many options for infantry, so many options for artillery. It is just one of probably the best faction for Conquest. So there you go, guys. That is my overall rundown for new starters, on new beginner players that kind of want to play Conquest. Why I think Germany, or why I think this faction is the best faction to play for Conquest. But that's it today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and our support. Make sure you hit that like button, and I will see you in the next video. See you later, and goodbye.